Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, Sage doesn't like the restrictions being lifted, and Tory MPs are calling for a reduction in the 2 metre distance of the social distancing rule. So, the 2 metre side of it, they're not going with, well, it's a bit arbitrary because other countries have got 6 feet. In America, of course, only Spain has it as 2 meters. You've got 1.5 and even 1 meter distances in other countries. But instead, they're saying, let's cut it down to 1.5 meters, not as far as one, although that would be more useful, simply because that would mean for the hospitality sector, they'd be able to run at a higher capacity. And seeing as the grants for the furloughed workers, that the employers would get support in order to pay their workers, that's being reduced, that employers will have to pay more towards their workers who they can't get to work, then hopefully that'll enable more of an income for people in these hospitality sectors in order to actually be able to pay those wages. That's the idea behind it. So it isn't down to coronavirus being incredibly overblown, but instead trying to say, well, yeah, I know we said that this is a necessity for safety, but we can actually get away with a smaller side of it now that we're really feeling the pinch there, and we're concerned about our electability in the future. So I think the mask is slipping in a way. And that's why they're actually suggesting maybe we could do with lesser distance. So as the other countries, we've got France and Italy of 1 meter, and that's all the World Health Organization suggests as well. Germany's got 1.5, and Spain and the UK has 2 meters. So you've got Spain and Italy worst affected at 2 and 1 meters respectively, so it doesn't really seem to be affecting much. As I've said time and time before, and we'll probably say time and time again, the main problem with any of this is if you're forcing people into just a few select places, not caring about the distance there, and also not taking into account how long the virus will stay on a surface instead of in the air, then it's all pretty much useless, because that is the main problem. So in terms of revenues, we've got Kate Nichols, Chief Executive of UK Hospitality, saying that if you have 2 meter social distancing, that's the difference between opening at 30% of normal revenues or 60% with 1 meter social distancing. The point of the 2 meters compared to 1 meters is about the time the time comparison for risk of exposure of the air particulates that are being transmitted from one person to the other. So as they go into details, that they mention that the difference is about from 6 seconds to a minute. So you could be 2 meters away from somebody for a minute and you'd have the same risk of exposure as 6 seconds with someone at 1 meter. That's the difference. They don't care, again, about how long it stays on a surface, which is far more important. And if you're looking at hospitality and things are cleaned, whether it be hotel rooms or bars or tables, things like that, then if they're cleaned after each customer in order to appease the coronavirus gods, then there really isn't a problem. The main problem you'd have then is things passing along from one person to another, just like you would have with any sort of like outbreak on cruise ships. I mean, that would be the ideal thing to use as a marker of how to keep things sterile and clean when an infection takes place on board. You copy their practices, or at least you inspired by them, in order to stop the rate of transmission. The idea with state of transmission is that it will still be below 1, even with these restrictions being lifted. But we've got Professor Jonathan Van Tam, who's saying, no, you should, you shouldn't really lift anything yet. And what he says is incredibly telling, as he cautioned the public to be, and I quote, sensible and proportionate with the freedom we have wanted to give people. Now, I don't know who I need to remind here, but the government doesn't give freedom to anyone. They cannot give freedom, they can only take it away. They're not giving us anything. They simply are not taking as much as they were before. That's it. Without a government, you are free. That is your liberty. Chances are you do want some sort of authority and state in order to help you get by in life. That's fine, but they are restricting freedoms in doing so. So he says, don't tear the pants out of it. Tries to make it funny when the mask slips. So, of course, there are tangible things. On Monday, schools will reopen, and up to 6 people can meet in England. Wow. There's still a limit on households in various UK countries, and also trying to say, just try to keep it close to your home, basically. Just try and keep everyone close together. As we've seen, of course, New Zealand's last case has been discharged, as they seem to have found a way to cure it. So as long as they stop imports and stop anything coming in from abroad, then they'll be fine, and then just have to hold out as a domestic country until then. So in England, back to England, the ONS say there are currently 8,000 cases per day in England. And if they can keep it at that, then the NHS will not be overwhelmed, as it hasn't been yet and won't be. Of course, they've cancelled elective surgery, so it really comes back to getting them back in so that you don't defer treatment for cancer patients and end up killing more people from cancer than from coronavirus, as has already been estimated to have happened. So you'll have more people dying because they can't get cancer treatment than would from the total amount of coronavirus deaths. And that's just cancer compared to things like coronary heart disease, the other main killer. But, as they say, this is a significant moment. And it's great that they say now there is a clear, loud and public split between some of those advising government and those, quote, following the science. There may not be household names, but those speaking out are big figures in their fields and sit on stage for a reason. And this is largely a disagreement about when to start lifting lockdown rather than how. As they say, if you go early, then we all get a bit of our lives back sooner, as in able to pay our bills and actually live, so we actually get our lives back. We can actually have a life. But it means we'll stay close to that 8,000 cases a day figure and have less time to prevent the NHS being overwhelmed if a second wave comes, which it won't the sooner we get out of lockdown. If you wait longer, then cases are much lower and the virus easier to control, but the price is keeping lockdown and all the pain it is causing. Yes, pain as in people not being able to live. So Professor Van Tam told the press conference the lockdown easing must go painstakingly slowly, adding the scientists will continue to give the advice to the government. No apologies for that, we will absolutely continue to do that. I believe this is also a very dangerous moment, we have to get this right. And that's completely correct, you should keep continuing to give your advice. We will want advice from several different people, several different groups of people in order to understand the consequences of these actions, because that is something which is not done nearly enough when it comes to government intervention. But the infection rate should still stay below 1, that is, each person that has it only infects one other person, in which case the new cases don't increase, if you will. You stay at 8,000 cases the whole time and it never increases because there's one person that goes into remission or they're cured. At that point, you then got only one other person who has it, at which point that's fine and it will slowly spread around and the NHS won't be overwhelmed. The problem with it going so slowly is it has a much higher chance of mutating, of course, and that is what we're all concerned about, and that is where the second wave would come from and be far more deadly. And on that cheery note, until next time, have a good one.